Best Available Podcast, episode 15. Woo yay. We are traversing our way through the end of 2020. We have just a small number of weeks left. It is very windy outside today. It was very windy last night, but at least it's sunny, so I can just use the natural light in my room today, which is always nice. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. We have NFL Week 10, where there are actually some more competitive games than I thought there would be when I looked at this slate of games a week ago. We have the Masters we're going to touch on a little bit, and then we also will have our Disney segment. We watched some movies, and so we're gonna talk about some movies. So Matt, it's been a week since we've done our last podcast episode. So how have things been in your life over the past 7 days?
Well, great, Ryan. It's my neighbor across the street put up their Christmas tree, so we're approaching that point. They are one of the people that put it in their front window, so that way you see it when you drive by. We have a couple of those people on our street. Where do you put? I haven't been to your house in a while, Ryan. So where is your tree? Are you a front tree people, or more to the back so it's not seen like when you drive by?
It's right in the front of the window.
Yeah, we have been back and forth on that. Some years we put it in the front, some years we put it not so visible to the front, but we're getting to that point. So that was the first tree that I've seen up so far. Yeah, we watched some Disney movies. That was pretty fun. Got to see the new episode of The Mandalorian, Ryan, which was great. You need to watch Star Wars. Because it was quite fantastic Friday night. So yeah, it's been busy. How getting ready for college hoops? That starts up next week. Very excited for that. NCAA tournament, we learned just a couple minutes ago, will be all in one location. So I don't really know how that's going to work, but we'll get to that point when it comes. But how are you, Ryan?
I am here. I've had a good week. I dug into one of those books that I talked about last week. So if you listened to the podcast last week, you'll know that I got 3 books from a bookstore. And one of the books I got was called The Dynasty by Jeff Benedict. It kind of dives into the New England Patriots from a little bit before the time Robert Kraft purchased the team until I guess 2019. And I'm making a lot of progress. I'm going to hold it up. So this little thing right here is where I'm at. So I've read about 350 pages of it so far. It's a very good book. I have not been this invested in a book in a very long time. I'm on chapter 33, and there are 44 chapters in the book. I think I'm at 2012. I think I just got past the 2011 AFC Championship game where they advanced to the Super Bowl to play the Giants again. So that's where I'm at in terms of the timeline, but it's a very good book. Even if you're not a Patriots fan, but you're just an NFL fan, this is probably one of the best NFL books I've read. I don't mean this to sound hyperbolic, but probably in my life. This is a great deep dive into how this team became a dynasty and all the things that went on behind the scenes. So I definitely recommend it. But other than that, just trying to stay active. Last week was a little tough because it rained a lot. But yeah, we're in the holiday season. Yeah, so we're there.
Yeah, that was the Billy Cundiff AFC Championship game, Ryan, when he missed that field goal, right? Sterling Moore knocked away the pass on third down away from Lee Evans. It was that was when Joe Flacco was actually considered an elite quarterback. That was a fun night. I remember coming into school the next day, sense of relief, sense of pride that they made it to the Super Bowl, and then I had my hopes and dreams crushed 2 weeks later. So that was,
Yeah, well,
an
after
interesting time.
your West Virginia Mountaineers had lost a tough bowl game a few weeks prior, so it was nice that your New England Patriots could kind of get you back into the swing of things.
But yeah, that was when I was a lifelong West Virginia fan. Now I'm a lifelong Notre Dame fan for college football. Day one fan. So really happy. Big win against Boston College on Saturday. Ian Book did some things on the field. 100th win for Brian Kelly. That's our college football talk. I think that's the most we've ever talked about college football on this show.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. There was something kind of cool that happened in that game. So it kind of deals with New Jersey high school football, and even more specifically, kind of close to us. I guess you'd say short conference high school football in that game. So Kevin Bauman is a tight end for Notre Dame. And so after the game, he met up with a couple of guys from Red Bank Catholic that he used to play with, Charlie Gordonier, who's on Boston College, and Steve Lubisher. So they got a nice picture after the game, which was kind of cool to see. Just three New Jersey high school football players going up against each other in a pretty cool game. So that was nice to see. Just another reminder that New Jersey produces a lot of great high school football talent, even if they don't necessarily get the recognition every single year. We pump out a lot of great talent to colleges, not just in New Jersey, but around the country. So that was cool. It was nice to see New Jersey represented. And I agree, that's probably the most we've talked about college football since we started this podcast. Yeah, yeah. It took us 14 weeks, but we talked about it for about a minute and a half, I guess. So that's good for us. We're hitting
We'll
all
end up talking
sports.
more. We'll end up talking more about college basketball, though. Really excited for that, Ryan. Who's your team to watch this year in college hoops? Or are we saving that? Give us a little tease for when we talk about it a little bit next week.
Man, ah, you know what, Matt?
You could just name any team, like just a
There's
team.
there's just so many. I mean, I think if I go, so I kind of like Houston in the American Athletic Conference. I mean, they've won 139 games over Kelvin Sampson's first 6 seasons. They have some great players, so that they'll be a fun team to watch. But really, just that entire conference, it'll be a good one. But as you said, yeah, we'll get into it more next week. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So did you pull that right off of the PDF, Ryan? Or
So we're
we're
going to get into NFL Week 10, and as I said, there were some actually competitive games or entertaining games. Which when I looked at this slate a week ago, I didn't expect that one of those games I didn't expect to be competitive, and I guess in a sense it really wasn't. It was the Eagles and the Giants. Now normally we wouldn't talk about a 3-5-1 team and a 3-7 team, but because they're in such a heated divisional race, we kind of have to touch on it. The Philadelphia Eagles lost, and going into the game, I was reading all the beat writers, and they were all saying that this is probably going to be a close game. The Giants might win. I was like, really? I get you want to be a little cautious, but I don't buy that. The Eagles are healthy for the first time in a while. They're coming off a bye. Well, I guess my optimism got the best of me because they looked awful. I've said multiple times over the past several years, this is the worst loss I've seen as a Philadelphia Eagles fan. It just somehow keeps getting worse. The Giants put together a very good game plan. They executed very well. The Eagles did not. They were not good in any facet of the game. The play calling was bad. The game plan was bad. The quarterback was subpar. The offensive line was bad. The defense was bad. The rush defense was bad. The pass defense left a lot to be desired. And the special teams had issues. So that was everything that went wrong with the Eagles yesterday. But they're still in first place in the NFC East, 3-5-1 division leader. But the Giants are, I think their record is a little deceiving. They started off the season a little rough, obviously, but they are turning a corner. And I think that if there's any team that's going to make a run at this awful division, it's probably going to be the Giants. They're better defensively than they get credit for. And now it seems like offensively, things are finally starting to kind of come together. I think the offensive line is still a little bit of a question mark, but as long as Daniel Jones doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to be in a good position to win some games here down the stretch.
Yeah, so I'm glad you kind of gave a little credit to the Giants because we could joke about it all we want in our group chat, Ryan, but I think one thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is that Daniel Jones really has never had a healthy receiving core until like right now. He's got Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton yesterday too. He has Golden Tate, Evan Ingram for Giants fans, whatever that's worth. But he's been playing pretty decently despite that one. And if he catches that one pass, Ryan, their record is even better. A couple weeks ago against the Eagles, also. So you're right, they are starting to turn the corner. I think you bring up a good point about their defense. I think that's something that has really improved in the Joe Judge era. A team that has been maligned over the past couple of years for defensive play, but having guys like Blake Martinez in there to solidify it at the linebacker position is always good, and they have a lot of solid players too. Um, yeah, the Eagles, Ryan. I don't know. It's not ideal, but hey, you're still in first place, so that's great. Carson Wentz, as a Carson Wentz fantasy team owner, I have to ask you, what the hell happened yesterday? Is
It's the same thing that's happened all year. I saw somebody say that Doug's play calling gets aggressive when everybody's injured. Uh, and it's true. When you see Wentz playing with a bunch of bums, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, because obviously there's a reason these guys are in the NFL, but we saw it at the end of last year when he was playing with a bunch of bums. The offense actually was actually doing some things well. So you figure, okay, well, if they're doing well with these guys that they just got from the corner Wawa about 5 minutes away, when everyone's healthy, they should be even better, right? Well, no. The problem it seems to be that when Doug has all this talent at his disposal, he becomes real conservative with his game plan. He just calls a bunch of uninspired plays that don't work, and he just keeps going back to them even though he knows that they don't work. So the game planning of Doug seems to be a major issue, and it's been an issue for a while. I thought that Wentz, given the circumstances, was okay yesterday. He had some issues with the ball, but I think that was more so Jason Kelsey, who had some trouble snapping yesterday. I didn't really understand why. It wasn't like it was, raining or anything, but that was an issue. Um, I don't know why they didn't maybe run the ball a little more because they were kind of gashing the Giants, but I don't know. I do want to say before I talk about the Eagles a little more, the Giants, uh, as you say, we've joked about them a little bit, and they do have 3 wins. Their only 3 wins are against Washington and Philadelphia, so you can kind of wonder what kind of team they are. But I mean, this is a team that only lost by 10 points to the 9-0 Steelers. They lost by 4 points to the Bears. That was a game they probably should have won. If Saquon was healthy for that entire game, they probably win that. You can make the argument if he's healthy this entire year, they're probably not 3-7 right now. The 49ers game they were never in, but they only lost by 8 points to the Rams. They lost by 3 points to the Cowboys. So you said they lost by only 1 point to the Eagles, 2 points to the Buccaneers. They've been in close games this year. They're kind of similar to the Chargers in some aspects that they've had chances to win a lot of games this year. They just haven't been able to close. So I think you look at their upcoming schedule, they obviously have some tough games, but they could definitely beat Cincinnati this upcoming week. They have to be on the road for that. They have to travel to Seattle, but we'll talk about Seattle in a little bit. Anything can happen. And then you have Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, and Dallas to close out the year. So this is definitely a team. We've talked about 6, 7 wins, maybe being enough to win this division. The Giants could definitely get to 6 or 7 wins and win the NFC East. And you compare that to the Eagles' schedule, Matt, it's a night and day difference. The Eagles, I don't know when they're going to get their next win. You travel to Cleveland, then you have Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona. That could be 5 losses in a row right there. So I'm not going to say the season's over for the Eagles, but they're digging a very deep grave right now, and it's going to be pretty difficult to get out of it, in my opinion.
yeah, in order for any of these teams to make the playoffs, you're going to have to play well within this division, because you've mentioned the opponents that the Eagles are going to have to play. That's the same for pretty much all of the other teams in the NFC East. You're going to have to play this tough schedule. You're going to have to play teams like the Steelers. You're going to have to play teams like the Ravens. And granted, the Eagles have already got that out of the way, but as you mentioned, you're going to have to play Green Bay. You're going to have to play New Orleans, still Arizona. I mean, Cleveland, I think, is a winnable game, and I think Seattle's a winnable game for you, Ryan, just based off of the direction of those two teams. But yeah, I don't know. I could see a scenario to where it goes New York, Washington, Philadelphia as the order of finish in this division. Because I think Washington is a lot better than their record says as well. And we talked about that last week. If Alex Smith is throwing for close to 400 yards in a game, they might be the team to beat. And granted, you could say, well, they played against the Lions, but I just the way, and I give Carson Wentz the benefit of the doubt because the offensive line, I feel like a guy's limping off the field, Ryan, almost every other play for the Eagles. And granted, most of those guys come back, but it's tough. You're in the most competitive division of football. So technically, every team's in it. So you're not out of it, but it's going to be a very rough holiday season for you, Ryan, just based off of these teams you're playing. Because even the Washington game at the end of the year is not an easy win. I mean, your only easy game you play is against the Cowboys, and
I'm
that's
gonna
at Dallas.
I'm gonna stop you right there. There's no more easy games for this team. The Giants game was supposed to be easy, and it wasn't. The amount of talent the Eagles have, they should have been able to win the game pretty easily, and they didn't. So even that Cowboys game, I don't care who's a quarterback. They could get Jason Garrett back from the Giants for one game to be their quarterback. That still wouldn't be an easy game. So we've brought up Washington a little bit. So let's talk about Washington because they had a very entertaining game against Detroit. Your lifelong Detroit Lions, Matt, who went up 24-3 at one point. I looked at the score. I was like, oh, that game's probably over. Washington looks like they're out of it. So I kind of put all my attention back to the Eagles. And then they get a touchdown late in the third quarter. And Antonio Gibson gets a couple more touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And suddenly, out of nowhere, the game's tied up. So it looks like once again the Lions collapse. They get a field goal with 2.5 minutes left. It gives them a lead, 27-24. But Alex Smith and the football team marched right down the field. They tied up with 16 seconds left. Now, at this point, I turned off the game. I was like, okay, 16 seconds left. It's going overtime. I'll check back in a bit. Far be it from me to, I think it was either in a group chat or on Twitter or something, to hear, you might have said something about, I don't know. I saw someone say something about Detroit. I was like, what could have possibly happened? And then I looked to see that Matt Prater had hit a 59-yard field goal to win the game as time expired. And then I learned that Chase Young had taken a very stupid penalty that helped the Lions get into that position in the first place. So, Matt, your Detroit Lions that you've been banging the drum for all season long, it seemed like they were about dead, but they're still in it. They are now at 4-5. They're 2 games back of the 7 spot in the NFC. But as you said, they're on the bubble, and they're probably going to stay on the bubble for a while. So, congratulations. I'm happy for you. But I did want to make a point about Washington in that Alex Smith looked bad the first few times he had in-game action, which was to be expected. But the team as a whole looked a lot better against Detroit. And they're another team, as you kind of alluded to. You look at their upcoming schedule, they have winnable games. They could be there at the end. And I agree. I could definitely see this team finishing ahead of the Eagles. I could see that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that before Alex Smith got hurt, they not only had a winning record, but they were one of the better teams in the NFC East and maybe even in the NFC, right? They were off to a really hot start and they were statistically playing well. And a lot of people were saying, well, maybe it's a better version of Kirk Cousins. And obviously the injury happened and he's still getting comfortable. By the way, this was the first Detroit Lions win at Ford Field, Ryan, in 385 days. So it's as a starved fan of the Lions, I've been really waiting for us to get a win at Ford Field. Finally got one there. I still, in all seriousness, I don't know about this Patricia thing, Ryan. I mean, to allow a team like Washington for a guy in Alex Smith who really hasn't played in 2 years to kind of run down the field with Antonio Gibson and a bunch of other guys that should not put up a fight against some of the caliber of players you have on defense. It's kind of a question mark, but hey, you might go up against Carolina without Teddy Bridgewater. Then you get Houston on Thanksgiving. Then you go to the Bears, who are on a skid right now. 3 wins right there. You're 7-5. I just fixed the Detroit Lions right there. 4-game winning streak after that Bears game going into Green Bay. That'll be a solid early December matchup. But yeah, in terms of Washington though, Ryan, I think they might realistically win that division. I like you only need 6 wins. It's not like you're going to need to go on some big run like the Patriots or someone has to climb out of a hole. You could get to 5 or 6 wins and you'll win that division. So,
I gotta say, Fox is probably thrilled that one of their Thanksgiving games or their Thanksgiving game is Washington at Dallas. They have to be excited about that. I guess it doesn't really matter because when it comes to Thanksgiving football, you just eat and the game is kind of just there as a side. But
well, the CBS game's not good either. It's
no, it's
Houston
not.
and Detroit.
Mm-mm.
The only good game is the night game, and that's Baltimore Pittsburgh.
That's
I
that's kind of how it's trended recently too. And this is I get that it's a tradition, but I really wish we would let other teams that aren't Detroit and Dallas have Thanksgiving games. I get why it is the way that it is. I've read why it is the way that it is. But you just limit yourself so much as to what games you can put on. I
Well,
just
I say just take the best game of their season. Take the best game of Detroit's season and put it on Thanksgiving. And I know you wouldn't do that with a divisional game. So if we eliminate divisional opponents, let's see here. Put New Orleans and Detroit. That was a game they played earlier in the year. Put New Orleans on Thanksgiving. Put Tampa Bay on Thanksgiving. So I don't know why we thought, especially, I think this came after they traded DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think anyone would have thought we would put Houston against Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. But yet again, there is a divisional matchup at 4:30. So if that's the case, then why don't you do Green Bay Detroit? I don't know. If you look at other leagues, Ryan, and like the NBA on Christmas Day, it's the best matchups that you can possibly have in the NBA. I'm trying to think of some like MLB opening day. I'll have some marquee matchups, but like if Thanksgiving's your go-to day for the NFL, you got to have your marquee games on there, right? I mean, and you have one of them at 8:30 at night, but the other two, I mean, I'm going to watch college basketball over this.
well, in the 8:30 game, everyone's going to be all full of food. Like that's always the dangerous game because by that point you've already eaten too much. You're already tired, not going to be able to stay up for it. So for that to just be your only good game of the day, that's a risk. I don't know. I've been saying this for years that they need to get Dallas and Detroit off of Thanksgiving somehow. I hope that it happens at some point. I get that. As I said, I get the tradition behind it, but just it's over. It's 2020. We can change these things. So let's go ahead and do that. But Matt, your Detroit Lions are in the hunt, which is all you want them to be. So that's we'll see how long they remain in the hunt. A game that was not supposed to be competitive. The line going in was Green Bay minus 13 and a half. Ended up very, very close as Green Bay played host to the 1-7 Jacksonville Jaguars. And it was just a 4-point win. The Packers barely squeaked it out. Seems like it was a classic trap game, as much as I hate that term. The Jaguars just hung around all day. They got a punt return from one of your favorite athletes ever, Keelan Cole, that kept them in the game. I I I don't know what to make of I don't know what to make about any team in the NFC, much less the Packers. This was supposed to be. It's not even like they played bad. It's just they let the Jaguars stay in the game, and I don't know. Aaron Rodgers looked good. I guess that's a positive. He might have actually vaulted himself to the top of the MVP conversation because of the way another team has been playing recently. But the Packers right now find themselves at 7-2. Matt, they're right now the number one seed in the NFC. I don't know if they'll stay there over the final 7 weeks of the season, but they've put themselves in a pretty good position with a pretty easy way to end the season when you look at their upcoming games. We've talked about this a lot, but I mean, they have Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, Carolina. Tennessee doesn't look very good. Chicago again. So Green Bay, I mean, I like Green Bay. I don't want to make it seem like I don't like Green Bay, but I just feel like this was a game that you really needed to. I get any given Sunday, but this was a game you really needed to win by more than 4 points, in my opinion.
Yeah, I said this before. I think Green Bay, for whatever reason, over the past 5 or 6 years, has never played a hard schedule. I don't think they're ever challenged by anyone. And that's why we see these inflated records and they get into the playoffs and then there's a disappointing exit. They get blown out by San Francisco or whatever it is. But, you win the games you're supposed to win. I agree. It should be by more than 4 points, especially when you're at home. But I think not playing in front of a crowd at Lambeau definitely plays into it a little bit. Aaron Jones kind of struggled yesterday to get going. So I get that. Keelan Cole, you're right, had a really solid day. Dropped him in fantasy a couple weeks ago. So could have used his points this week. But yeah, for whatever it's worth, Ryan, they're first place in the NFC. But again, I could realistically make the case for 1 to 2 teams that are better than them. So it's just a wait and see kind of thing. But once again, here it is. Aaron Rodgers gets a cupcake schedule down the stretch, and it's not so much their fault. It's just that they get lucky, I think, in some respects with the schedules. Then they also play in a division where no one has challenged them over the past decade, outside of maybe the 1 year Minnesota was good when they got blown out by the Eagles in the NFC title game. So sure, 7-2, you got to win. Jacksonville sucks, Ryan. They are like actually bad. But yeah, I don't. This game was just unexciting for me. It didn't really do anything for me.
If you're Jacksonville, Matt, do you go back to Minshew when he gets healthy? Because the narrative now is that you have another 6th-round quarterback that's kept you in 2 consecutive games. They lost the game against the Texans by 2. They lost this game against Green Bay by 4. The narrative now is that the team looks better with this guy under center than Minshew. So do you just let it ride and see what you have, or do you let this guy with the mustache and the hair back under center for the rest of the season?
I mean, I think both are going to put you in a good position to get the number 1 overall pick. I mean, you just got to hope that the Jets win a game, because I think Trevor Lawrence, and I said this before, Lawrence on this Jacksonville team compared to the Jets is 2 completely different narratives, because he would actually have good players on offense. Jacksonville, granted, they're losing games, but that's because they don't have a quarterback to get the ball to capable guys like DJ Chark, Keelan Cole, Tyler Eifert. So the weapons are there. So if I'm Jacksonville, I think both quarterbacks they have right now kind of, let me put it nicely, they're not the answer. So whatever puts you in the best position to get the quarterback of the future, go for it. But it kind of just shows that they put a lot of faith in Minshew, and I guess he earned that right, Ryan. He was a cheap option. They could let it ride. But with Doug Marrone and everything, like, there's still a lot of things that have to change with this franchise, and quarterback I don't think is really solidified. Stop searching for Tom Brady, because you're not going to find him. So try and get Trevor Lawrence and then move on with your day.
Matt, your Tampa Bay Buccaneers put on a hurt against the Carolina Panthers 46-23. Ronald Jones looked like he was in the doghouse, but then he went on a 98-yard scamper to the end zone, and he ended up with 192 yards on the day. Tom Brady has looked rejuvenated. He's looked revived playing in Tampa Bay under Bruce Arians, which I think some people might have written this guy off. I'm not saying that he's going to decline at some point, obviously. He's not the same guy he was 10 years ago, right? But still, what he's doing at his age is pretty remarkable. And I think you're finally starting to see what weapons can do for a quarterback of his kind of stature after years of not really having much in New England. You now in a situation where you have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and now Antonio Brown. You have some solid running backs, a good offensive line, and an offensively minded head coach. And it seems like it's all kind of coming together. I think I said a couple weeks ago I didn't know what to make about the Buccaneers. And I mean, to my defense, they had some games where they didn't look very good. They only won against the Giants by 2 points. They got blown out by the Saints. But I think you look at this Tampa Bay team, they're a good team with some flaws like about everybody else in the NFC. But they have the best quarterback of all time on their side. So I think if I'm going to put my money behind anybody in the NFC, I'd probably put it behind Tampa Bay. I think I'm just more confident in them than anybody else in the NFC at this point.
Yeah, I think in order for them to put themselves in a great position, they're going to need New Orleans to drop a game or two so they could get ahead because they don't have that head-to-head tiebreaker. But they said it on the broadcast yesterday. I think it was Kevin Burkhardt, but Tom Brady never really has back-to-back bad games. And he went out there yesterday and played really well, threw 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, and you're right. I like the after the Super Bowl win against the Rams, he really didn't have much to throw to because Amendola left, Hogan eventually left, Gronk retired, probably missing a bunch of guys there. Edelman was getting hurt all the time and traded Brandon Cooks, traded all these guys away. And so now that he has these weapons, makes his job a lot easier. He also has a really good offensive line. No disrespect to what they had in New England, but I think Tampa Bay's is that was the question mark coming into the season for Tampa Bay was whether or not their offensive line was going to hold up. And to their credit, Tristan Wirfs has looked really good as a rookie. Marpet, Jensen, all these other guys are playing really well. So they, I think, are the most complete team in the NFC. But as you and I have talked about, that doesn't really say much because there's a lot of teams that kind of have one or two things missing, like you've mentioned. So it's a good win for them. Carolina has been putting up a fight all season long, but not having McCaffrey, Bridgewater now getting banged up. So they're going to kind of find the drop off. But yeah, Tampa Bay looking really good, Ryan. Looking really, really good. And that's the defensive bounce back that they needed too after getting smoked by New Orleans.
The other 1 o'clock game, and it was a weird way the schedule was aligned because of the Masters on CBS. Is that there were I think 5 1 o'clock games, and they were all on Fox. The other one was Houston and Cleveland in weather that was, I think, worse than it was a couple weeks ago before the Browns had their bye. And Cleveland pulled out the W. Nick Chubb fantasy owners were probably upset that he didn't get them the touchdown. I know the bettors were upset that he didn't get the touchdown for the Browns to cover. But now Cleveland won 10-7. I'm not going to make too much of the offensive statistics for both teams just because the way the weather was, but Cleveland's now moved to 6-3. And I think the bigger thing here that I want to talk about is now the AFC playoffs. The Cleveland finds themselves now on the outside looking in at 6-3. They're one of 6 teams in the AFC, Matt, that are 6-3. They joined Tennessee, Baltimore, Miami, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, even Buffalo. They're 7-3, so they're right there. You can, it's. I think this is more competitive than anybody expected going into the year. Now, we briefly touched on this in our group chat, but I want to talk about it here. 2 of these teams are, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to throw the Patriots in too because the thing I'm looking at, they have the Patriots in the hunt. So why not? So, which teams don't make it in right now? So, as it stands right now, Indy is the division leader, 4 seed. Then you have Las Vegas, Miami, Baltimore, all 6-3. They're right now holding the wild card spot. So, which teams do not make it into the AFC playoffs?
Well, I think Cleveland is my firm one out of this. I think not having Odell and kind of they're just not all there yet. They haven't really put together complete games, and they're able to pull wins out, which is great. But I just think there's better teams there. I'm very grateful you put New England in there, Ryan. I think a lot of people forget that out of these teams that are ahead of them, Ryan, they have the tiebreaker over Vegas, they have the tiebreaker over Miami, and they have the tiebreaker over Baltimore. So put that as you will, but if New England somehow finds a way to get hot, which they would have to go like 5-2 to even have a chance down the stretch. So I don't really think that's likely. I'll put them on the outside looking in. And you know what? I'm between Tennessee and Miami. I don't really, I think Miami's the better team, but I think Tennessee finds a way to get hot in the second half of the season. So but I'm between those two right now. But I think Vegas will get in. Vegas benefits from being in a division with two teams that they can beat consistently. So give me the Browns on the outside, the Patriots, and then either the Titans or the Dolphins.
I agree with you. I think the Raiders make it. They have the Chiefs coming up, but after that, they don't really play anybody. I mean, you have Indianapolis, but I mean, you play Atlanta, the Jets, the Chargers, the Broncos. You have a game against the Dolphins mixed in there. So they should probably win enough games to get in. I'm going to buy in on the Dolphins. I'm sold on them. I think Brian Flores is really, I mean, there was talk last year that he was one of the worst head coaches in football for a time, but he's really turned things around. And now I think it's safe to say he's trending upwards in terms of how coaches are viewed around the league. He's put this team in a great position, and I think that Miami's going to get in. And Matt, this is going to be a hot take. I'm going to say Cleveland gets in over Baltimore and Tennessee. I look at Cleveland's schedule. I just find it very hard to believe that they don't get 5 more wins. You have Philadelphia, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Baltimore, and then the Giants, the Jets, and the Steelers. I find it very hard to believe that they can't win 5 of those games and get to 11-5 on the season. So I think that it's crazy to say this, but I don't think the Baltimore makes it into the playoffs. I think they just miss out, maybe by a game, maybe via tiebreaker. I don't know, but I think Baltimore misses out. I think Tennessee, we've talked about peaking too early, but I think it's a real concern with the Titans that they looked very good early in the season, but now they don't. And New England, I think that they could probably battle back to finish 500, but I don't think they're really in the playoff hunt. But they'll. I don't know. I don't want to bet against Belichick, but this just doesn't seem like the year. But I'm going to go with Las Vegas, Miami, and Cleveland as my final 3 teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miami could win the division. I think if they either need to win the division or be just as good to like I'm sold on the Dolphins also, but I also think that having a rookie quarterback in pressure situations, and I get Tua as a big game quarterback from his days in Alabama, but I don't want to take Lamar out of the playoffs just yet. So we might need to revisit this in 2 weeks. I think Tennessee's kind of but we see what they do in the second half of seasons because it's getting cold, harder to tackle Derrick Henry. So that formula is going to click at some point. But to Zach Cosenza, we are both locking your Raiders into the playoffs. So congratulations. For the longest time, it was usually my team that would be in the playoffs. This year, it might be Mr. Cosenza's team as the lone wolf in the postseason. So you see what I did there? I said that I insinuated Washington would win the NFC East, Ryan.
I got you. Okay. So the Raiders throttled the Broncos 37-12. So that's part of the reason why I think me and Matt are high in the Raiders. They've looked good recently. And they beat a team that they need to beat. Denver, the offense looks almost as bad as Chicago's, maybe even worse. I'm starting. So if I'm on the Drew Lock train, I kind of have one foot out the door right now. I really don't want to give up on the guy, but I think I'm starting to realize that he might not be a long-term answer. When this is coming from someone that was a big fan of his coming into the season, he just has not performed the way that I thought he would. I know he's without Cortland Sutton. I don't know if he's hurt. I mean, I guess at this point everybody's hurt by this point in the season, but I don't know. I don't think that watching what I've seen this year, I can confidently say that he can be a good answer quarterback for the Broncos. I think they might have to reevaluate that position at the end of the year. But I don't know. I mean, Matt, I know you're not ready to call off Drew Lock as a potential option in the NFL, but I'm starting to get there. I think that this experiment is failing massively.
Well, I do think he's hurt to some extent. Remember, he had the shoulder injury early on in the year. I don't know if that's part of the reason. People were on Twitter were saying that he kind of looked like he was in pain a little bit yesterday. And Sutton, not having Cortland Sutton really at all this season, excuse me, plays a real factor into it, in my opinion, because he opens up the door for the rest of his weapons. He's also lost a couple other guys over the span of the last month. I mean, my whole thing is the grass is always greener on the other side till you get there, and then you realize your next option sucks. So I think Drew Lock is a lot better than the other options out there. And you have a young offense. Why not keep a young quarterback in there and have them develop together instead of trying to throw in? They tried the veteran route last year with Joe Flacco. That clearly didn't work. So I say just give the guy, this is his first full season anyway. So, and it's not even a full season because he missed a couple games here and there with an injury. So, I'm not ready to pull the plug yet. I think we're as a football society, we are too quick to pull the plug on a quarterback, especially a guy who, of the stature of Locke and you know how he came in and the hype that he had around him. So I think we're all too quick to pull the plug and say let's tank for somebody else. So you see what happened to Daniel Jones, see what happened to Sam Darnold, see what happened to even Baker Mayfield. Everyone's ready to get rid of all these guys. Just let Drew Lock settle in, give him another year, and we'll see where we are after technically year 3.
So Matt wants to give him a little more time. I don't know. We can revisit this in December. Right now, as I said, I have one foot out the train car door. Maybe I'll get off at the platform. Maybe I'll get back in the train fully. I need to wait and see.
But like, what do you expect these guys to do? Like,
To be able to competently run the offense. If he's hurt, that's one thing. But if he is actually hurt,
I think he might.
Well, then they
hurt.
need to put him on the bench because it's really affecting how teams around the league are viewing him. If he's hurt, then he shouldn't be playing because that's tanking his value and it's making him look like he can't run an NFL offense. But if he's not hurt, it's really concerning because I understand he's without Cortland Sutton, but the other guys he has there aren't just pushovers. Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, and a good running back duo. The only way he gets out of this, in my eyes, is if it comes out as saying that he never fully healed from his injury and he came back too quickly. Which, if that's the case, then that's malpractice on the team. I understand that these guys are always looking over their shoulder, so they never want to give up anything to the guy sitting behind them. But if he's hurt, he should not be playing.
I think he came back early. They were saying he was going to be out for a couple more weeks, and he kind of surprised some people coming back. And I mean, listen, I don't think this is all Drew Lock's fault. You shouldn't be giving up 37 points to the Raiders. Like, Zach, I'm sorry, but you're giving up 37 points to Derek Carr. Like, come on. You shouldn't be doing that. So defensively, they have a lot of issues too. So I don't think it's all just him. I'm not going to ready to just put all of the blame on some 23-year-old dude who is playing with like one shoulder half the year. So I'm telling you, just give the guy one more year because we move on too quickly from quarterbacks and they never get time to settle in, be integrated with the offense. You wonder why guys like Breeze, Brady, and everyone who say, oh, you're going to compare them to that. I say, well, they're just settling into the offense. Look at the jump Josh Allen has had this season being settled into the offense. People are ready to pull the plug on Josh Allen. And yeah, you're going to give me a face with him, but you got to give these guys time to settle in and learn how to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, that would be like us after our sophomore year of college, just saying, yep, we got it. And then just go right out to the real world without having 2 more years under our belt. So you just got to give the guy a break, cut him a little slack. It's concerning.
He's such a big part of, he's such a big part of why they're losing though. He's not the only reason, but his accuracy issues, I understand he's aggressive, but sometimes he's way more aggressive than he should be. He's lucky they won the Chargers game because that game would have been on him too. He starts off so slow every week. It's just, as I said when we started talking about this game, I'm not fully out on him. I'd like to think that there's still some type of potential there, but he's not inspiring a lot of confidence.
I mean, he's not. I mean, I agree with you, but I want to say, if you're Denver, you are not going to compete for anything this season. So this is a year to kind of get your guys in, build on the young talent, and to their credit, they're trying to. But I think not having Sutton is a big part. He does have a lot of good weapons still. He's not playing well. He's not effective. I understand that. But I'm not ready to just say, well, he's having one bad season. Let's get rid of him. Let's find someone else. I think we move too quickly in that regard for a lot of these quarterbacks. That's why Josh Rosen isn't in the NFL anymore. We never got to see Josh Rosen for a full NFL season. So you got to give these guys time. After 3 years or two full seasons for Locke's case, which will be at the end of next season, if after two full seasons, so a 32 game sample size, that you don't like what you see, I'm all right with that. But to just sit there and say after a year and a half of him playing that he's not the answer, all the quarterbacks they've went through over the past 5 years, Ryan, I don't think they are willing to go through more either. So I don't think he's not playing well this year. I'll be objective, but I also just like don't kick him to the curb because that defeats the whole purpose of the drafting and developing a quarterback.
Right now, they're 11th in the draft order. They could fall even more. If there's a quarterback there that they like at this point in time, I think you need to consider it. They're not going to get Trevor Lawrence. They're not going to get Justin Fields. But if Lance is there, if Wilson's there, if Trask is there, and they like him enough, I think you would consider it at this point. At least I would if I was John Elway. But I don't know. Locke has some more weeks to kind of prove himself. We'll see. Um, Two teams that are probably pretty happy with the quarterback situation are Los Angeles and Miami. And Miami, we talked about this a little bit. They won again. They put themselves in playoff contention at 6-3. The Chargers lost yet another close game. It was as close as a 3-point game midway through the third quarter, but the Chargers couldn't really get it going offensively until a late touchdown that made it an 8-point game. But Matt Tua, his debut was kind of subpar, but he's looked confident and poised. I think the past 2 weeks as a starter, especially without his top running back in Miles Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed, there we go, was their top running back, and he looked okay. He ran for 85 yards and a touchdown. But I think for if you're a Dolphins fan, you should be confident that your organization picked Tua. I've said this a lot. I was a big Tua guy coming out of the draft, and I understand there are a lot of question marks around him, but he's looked pretty good so far. I know that once defenses adjust, things might be different, but to start off his career, I think he's looked okay, and I think that's just what the Dolphins need.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if that's going to push them to the playoffs with the rookie quarterback. I think he's kind of benefited from also having one of the best scoring defenses in the NFL. One of the teams that gives them really good field position, oftentimes scores touchdowns on their own. It kind of reminds me of the Patriots defense last year. Gets a lot of turnovers, gets a lot of points off those turnovers. They're in a good position, not having Gaskin, Hurts, but yeah, the Chargers. I mean, it's just kind of a running joke at this point. Lose by one possession every week, but I think both these teams will be competitors down the road. So Miami this season, I think LA, if they make the right offseason moves, could be where Vegas is next year.
The 49ers traveled to New Orleans, Matt, and the big story out of this game was that Drew Brees was on the sidelines to start the second half, and he was pointing to his ribs. People didn't know whether it was his ribs or if it was actually his shoulder. Ian Rappaport today tweeted that he suffered a rib contusion and that New Orleans is bracing for Brees to miss some time. How much time that is, it doesn't seem like anybody knows. It doesn't even seem like Drew Brees knows if he can play next week. But now it seems like we're going to get Jameis for at least a little bit of time. Maybe it's only 1 week, maybe it's more. It's not the best time for them to have to go to Jameis Winston. Although, you know what? As I say that, he does bring a different component to the team. I mean, his arm is a little bit stronger at this point than Drew's is. So maybe he can push the ball down the field a little more and they could go a little more vertical than they have been. You look at their upcoming games, you have Atlanta twice, Denver, Philadelphia. You have a game against Kansas City, but then you have Minnesota and Carolina. So it's not like you have the most challenging teams coming up, but I just this isn't a Tampa Bay's right on their heels, and I understand that New Orleans has the tiebreaker, but this isn't a great time for your starting quarterback to go down, in my opinion, especially because the offense looked like it was finally getting things together. Maybe not yesterday per se, but at least before that. But I don't know, man. I mean, we know everything surrounding Jameis Winston. Maybe he's learned something sitting behind Drew Brees for 10 weeks. I don't know. He didn't really play enough yesterday for me to form an opinion. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Jameis can do if he is in fact the starter, and maybe he can prove to them that he can be the answer once Brees retires. I don't know.
I think if you're New Orleans, the only way you're going to make this a successful experiment is if you just turn them loose. You're going to get turnovers, you're going to get pick sixes, but in order for this to work, you're just going to have to throw them out there, not do the 50-50 split with Taysom Hill. They can't do that, in my opinion. That doesn't benefit anyone. I don't think Taysom Hill is an NFL quarterback. I think he's great for what he does. I don't think he's a full time NFL quarterback. Just give the ball to Jameis, let him rip, and see what happens. Because if you look at the receivers that they have, Ryan, a lot of those guys are capable deep threats too. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is going to do a lot better going down the field as opposed to what they have him currently doing with Drew Brees. So I think this opens up a total different dimension of what they could do. I think if you're a Saints fan, just embrace the interception, embrace the pick six, and just let the guy throw the ball because it's going to be exciting. I think they'll score maybe even some more points and be a little more consistent without Drew Brees because those short passes, Ryan, are great, but defenses could game plan for that. And if your quarterback can't throw the ball down the field, you're not going to be able to keep your offense on the field. So I think Sean Payton just has to commit to Jameis, let him rip, and see what happens. That's the only way it's going to work.
I want to stay with the NFC West before we go to probably the biggest game of the day and one of the best games of the season. By the way, the Steelers beat the Bengals 36-10. They went to 9-0. The Seahawks, we want to talk about peaking too early. It looks like the Seahawks might be guilty of that. I don't know. They lost
Say
to
it,
the
Ryan.
they
Say
lo-
it.
they lost to the Los Angeles Rams 23-16. The Seahawks have not looked so I wrote about this in my NFC West preview back in September that for whatever reason Pete Carroll can't seem to solve Sean McVay, and that trend continued this year through the first meeting between the two teams. So you look at Seattle, they've dropped 3 of their last 4 games. I don't know if we jumped the gun a little bit with Seattle. I say we as a collective NFL fan base. This was a team that at one point looked like a potential 1 seed in the NFC and a Super Bowl contender, but now seeing how they've played 3 out of the last 4 weeks, it's hard to see them as getting past. I'd say depending on who they get in the first round, it might be a little tough even to get out of wild card weekend. I don't. Russell Wilson is no longer the shoe-in for MVP at this point, which is upsetting, but that's just the way that's just where we're at this point. They lost a very tough game to the Cardinals a few weeks ago. They won by 10 over the 49ers, but then they lost to the Bills. Now they lost to the Rams. Their defense looks awful. It looks very, very bad. Pete Carroll, it looks like he's a little full of himself at this point. I think that's the best way I'm going to describe it. I don't know. I mean, the Seattle, they're lucky they're in the NFC because I don't think they're going to miss out on the playoffs with the teams that are behind them. The only team behind them that even has a chance to maybe overtake them is Chicago, but Chicago doesn't have anybody on offense. So Seattle at 6-3, they're probably going to make it. But right now they're the 7th seed, and that's a far cry from where they were just a few weeks ago when they looked like they could get in as the 1. So I think I'm out on Seattle right now. I think the defense, I don't know how you save it this season. I don't think there's anything you can do. I think that's just going to be a massive black hole that can be exposed by almost any team. You have Arizona again on Thursday night. That could be a loss. That could drop them to 6-4 and give Arizona some breathing room. Man, I don't know. I think Seattle did the right thing early on by letting Russ cook, but clearly they need to do more than just let him cook. Clearly, that's not the only answer.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that when you don't have a threat in the backfield like Chris Carson, that's going to play into the fact that you can now game plan for just letting Russ cook because there's no one out of the backfield that's really going to pose any threat. Like Alex Collins, who I forgot played football, that's not going to do anything. DJ Dallas, Travis Homer. I mean, you need Chris Carson in there to make this offense go. I think that's what is prevalent from all this. But I think the bigger takeaway, Ryan, their defense is historically one of the worst in NFL history. I mean, they just give up chunk play after chunk play. And I thought the Patriots defense was bad, but this is next level. They thought just slapping Carlos Dunlap on the line was going to do something. That clearly didn't work. Ken Norton has his hands full to try and make this defense into something because you gotta, like, the offense doesn't look the same either. I think that's Carson, but the defense, they can't stop a nosebleed, and that's going to come back to hurt them. And it's a shame to say. I don't know if I'm ready to call him a fraud yet, but we are one step closer. And I said it last week on the podcast, Ryan. I said that the Rams could come in, steal this game, and then we're looking at a much different NFC West because now the Rams have a tiebreaker. Now the Cardinals currently are a game up on Seattle in terms of tiebreakers as well. So they don't have a tiebreaker over two teams in their division, and they're going to go on a short week against a team that beat them a couple weeks ago, and a team that I think is one of the best offensive teams in the NFC. So they could realistically drop to 6-4, not have the tiebreaker over two teams ahead of them, and be looking at a date with like Green Bay in the first round of the playoffs. Green Bay or Tampa Bay or whoever.
So the Rams, I think we do need to talk about them a little bit. This was their biggest win of the season by far. They were 4-0 against the NFC East, and their only other win came against the Bears. They had lost by only 3 points to the Bills. They had lost by 8 to clearly a bad 49ers team. They lost to a good Dolphins team. So the Rams, I think, have cemented themselves. I'll admit, I flip flopped on this team a lot so far this year. Even you can listen to past episodes of the podcast. I flip flopped on them. I think I'm cementing them in they're a good team category. I don't know if they're a very good team, but they're a good team. And I think that it's safe to say that they will make the playoffs in the NFC this year. And Matt, you won't say it. I'll say it. I think Seattle are a bunch of frauds. I'm not confident in this team anymore. I really wanted to believe that this would be the year but even if they get the running backs back in the fray, I don't know. I'm not confident in this team at all. It's not that they're not good. I think that they're extremely inconsistent and they don't have a defense, which is kind of a big thing. Especially in this division that they're in. So I'll call them frauds. I think that, as I said, they could lose wild card weekend. Right now, they would play the Saints. I think they'd probably lose that game. Maybe as you said, maybe they play Green Bay. I think they lose that game too. If Arizona gets up to the 2 seed, they probably lose that. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm out on Seattle. I'm not fully in on the Rams. I still like the Cardinals the most out of any team in this division, but I'll give credit to the Rams. I said coming into the year, I didn't know what to expect. I thought they were the worst team in the division. I didn't think that they were going to be good. I thought they were capped out. They had a lot of issues, but they've bounced back from a tough year. They did lose Andrew Whitworth. That could be a big loss. That might hurt the offensive line. But at least for right now, they've put themselves in a good position to get back to the playoffs.
Well, they made the plays that they needed to win that game, right? So you're not going to go in there and necessarily blow this team out. And we're not expecting the Rams from 2 years ago. We're just expecting them to come out and win games. And this is by far, you're right, signature win. they have some winnable games on their schedule too, Ryan. I think the Rams are a good team. I'm not going to say anything more about elevating their status, but a couple weeks from now, you get San Francisco with, the JV squad at that point. You have a game against New England, which who knows what that's going to be like. That's on a short week. You still get to play the Jets, but having Arizona twice and Tampa Bay still on your schedule, we're going to learn a lot about the Rams. I'm glad you said it for both of us that Seattle is fraudulent. I like Arizona, Ryan. You were on Arizona from August, and I will give you a pat on the back for that. They're the most exciting team, and I'm probably leading you right into the next game we're going to talk about. But Arizona, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah, so this was not only the best game of the afternoon, it's probably one of the best games of the season, just all things considered. And this was the game we talked about last week when we just perused the schedule, I should say. We said, oh, Buffalo, Arizona, that'll be a good game. And it turned out that it was. It was close all throughout. Buffalo had a 23-9 lead. That was about as big as the difference got. Both these teams were close for the rest of the game. Looked like Josh Allen had led the team to a W, finding Stephon Diggs with 34 seconds left. But damn it, never count out touchdown Kyler, because he rolled out to his left, made an Aaron Rodgers-esque play as the clock was winding down, heaved the ball 50 yards down the field into triple coverage. It doesn't matter. DeAndre Hopkins is there. He came to DeAndre Hopkins, by the way. I think he's worth a little more than what the Texans traded him for. I don't know. I could be wrong. But he came down with it. One of the best calls of the year by Ian Eagle, by the way. It's beautiful. Almost made me shed a tear. And the Cardinals ended up coming out with the W, cementing themselves as one of the teams to watch in the entire league. They improved to 6-3 on the year. The Buffalo Bills fell to 7-3. What a game. The Cardinals are clearly a very good team. They're in a good position to win this division. They can really put a stranglehold on this division if they win Thursday night in Seattle and we'll go on to 7-3 on the year and drop Seattle to 6-4. I don't want to take anything away from the Bills. I thought that as a whole that they looked good and Josh Allen looked confident and made some good plays, but Matt, the Cardinals are good. They're a very good team.
Yeah, this doesn't take anything away from the Bills, like you said. I mean, that's the likelihood of that play being successful is very low in terms of NFL standards. I think it's ironic, and Ryan, you could correct me if I'm wrong on this. The same week that David Johnson went on IR, right? I think that was this week. It was the same week that DeAndre Hopkins caught a game-winning touchdown pass in triple coverage. What does that say, right? I mean, that trade now looks like the Mookie Betts trade of the NFL in a lot of regards. Kyler Murray, I'm going to talk about how accurate that ball was to Ryan. It's not like DeAndre really had to move a lot for that. He kind of just jumped up and it was right in his hands too. Kyler Murray is really good. And we've talked about how I've flip-flopped on him in Kingsbury a little bit, but the kind of cocky nature that Cliff has. But listen, I love the Cardinals. They're a fun team to watch. I almost, with the 6 games going on, Ryan, in the 4:00 window, I almost just put on the Arizona game and just watch that. Like, I was really close to just doing that as opposed to doing Red Zone. That's how much of a draw they are this season. So they're really good. I think defensively, they still miss Chandler Jones. They that's going to be a big loss. But again, when you have DeAndre Hopkins, you have a chance in any game. So I love the confidence he brings to that team. I love the swagger they have now. It opens up a lot of doors for the other receivers too, like Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella. So yeah, don't sleep on them for making a deep run in January either. I mean, Kyler Murray's no Carson Palmer, right? So remember the last time that Arizona was in a position like this, Carson Palmer gets absolutely annihilated by Carolina. I think that was freshman year of college, right? That was probably the last time Arizona was really prominent in this regard. And Kyler Murray is much better than Palmer. So I'm excited. This is a really good team, and they're going to be in a really good spot for a long time.
Right now, they're the 3 seed in the NFC. It looks likely at this point that they'll probably play one of their NFC West counterparts in the first round of the playoffs, but maybe they get up to 1 or 2 at some point over these next 7 weeks. We'll see. But the Cardinals are a very good team. The Bills are a good team as well. The Bills are now on a bye, so the Dolphins could match them record wise if the Dolphins manage to pull out a win. But yeah, this was one of the best games of the season. It'll probably end up being one of the best games of the season when we look back at it. And one of the highlight plays of the year. It was just an all around great game for sure. Matt, the Sunday night game did not quite live up to it. The New England Patriots battled the Baltimore Ravens, and the Patriots did stay in the hunt. They are grasping onto their playoff hopes very tightly, and they're still holding on to them tightly by improving to 4-5 with the win. Baltimore fell to 6-3. The weather was awful all game long, but then all of a sudden, as soon as the game ended, everything just cleared out. Weird, very weird that something like that would happen in New England.
Well, no, Ryan, the very weird part is that it was the final drive for the Patriots was a lot different than the final drive for Baltimore in terms of the weather. So I said it as it happened. I said, this is perfect timing for this rain to come in. And then you're right. It just magically stopped. I'm going to spin zone this, Ryan. Are you ready? Are you in a swivel chair right now? I'm going to spin zone this right now.
Okay.
So I'm not looking at this game from a playoff picture, right? I'm going to joke about it for the rest of the season in the group chat. They go, oh, don't count out the Patriots. I'm not looking at this from a playoff perspective. I'm looking at this perspective from the sense that most of these guys are going to be on the team next year, right? And this is kind of the audition for Cam to say, do we want to bring this guy back? And Ryan, I think, and this is my 2-minute plan to fix the Patriots. First, you're going to get all of the guys that opted out come back. Dante Hightower, Patrick Chung, all of these young guys that are playing. I thought Kyle Duggar had a really good game last night. Chase Winovich played really well last night. We're developing this younger talent. Terez Hall looks really good, who came off the practice squad. Nobody even knows who this guy is. I didn't until 2 weeks ago. Offensively, I'm willing to give Cam a 2 to 3 year deal right now. Go out, get him a weapon or two, right? So, Ryan, all you need to do is get this guy a wide receiver and a tight end. And then you have Damian Harris, who looks really good. Rex Burkhead, who, by the way, whenever he runs the ball, Ryan, he doesn't run the ball often, but it's almost a guaranteed 8 or 9 yards. He runs hard. He runs fast, never fumbles the ball. I'm willing to give Cam a couple years again, this hinges on getting him a couple weapons in free agency, maybe drafting another guy, filling out the offensive line, clear out the cap space, maybe don't pay Joe Thuney, let the O-line regress a little bit for the sense that you don't have to pay Thuney $15 million. But I'm all in on the Cam train. I really am. Early on, I was kind of opposed to it, but then I kind of realized that he wasn't throwing to anybody. But he's really kind of settled in. They're building this momentum now. I get one of those wins was against the Jets. I don't really care. Take that win out. They've beaten 3 playoff teams, like I've mentioned, right? So I'm not spinning this as we're back in the playoff hunt kind of thing, like a lot of the fan base is. I'm looking at it from this core can win against good teams, and that core is going to be there next year. If we can add to it and retain most of it, we're going to be in a really good position.
Oh, okay. Wow.
What do you disagree? What do you disagree with out of that plan that I have?
I'd see if there's another quarterback out there first, but I would not be against bringing back Cam.
But here's my thing: is I would love Dak, right? I don't know if I would throw out a huge contract and lock up a lot of money because that's what we're in right now, right? I think if Matt Ryan presents itself, maybe we go that route. But other than that, the quarterback free agent class, Ryan, really isn't that great. And I say if you're going to go draft a guy, if Bill goes and drafts his favorite quarterback, put him under Cam for 2 to 3 years because Cam could still get you into the playoffs and win you games with this core as long as you give him people to throw the ball to. Right? I mean, then you after 2 to 3 years of Cam, he kind of gets some success on the back end of his career. Then we hand it off to the next guy, and then wonderful.
We'll see. I do think that people are writing Bill off a little. My take is that people wrote Bill off a little too quickly. People say, "Oh, look at what Tom's doing in Tampa Bay." Da, 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 da. People forget that Bill is still a genius, and I think that this team, just talent wise, is not where his other teams have been. I'm sure that he's. I'll say reading the Dynasty, I've learned a lot about what Bill has done. So I can't put the season on him. I think that this team will be fine next year and going forward. This is just a 1 year blip. Um, but yeah, it was. It was weird, Matt, how the weather just suddenly just got better as soon as the game ended. It was
Yeah, I
weird.
was waiting for somebody to say that. But like, I'm not. I'm okay with bringing Cam Newton back, but again, you need to go and sign. Like, I don't know what free agent wide receivers or tight ends there are out there, but you need to get the best tight end. Just whoever it is, just go out and get them. I don't want like another Ben Watson experiment. I don't want Darren Fells. I want like a Hunter Henry kind of player. Then you go get a upper to mid level wide receiver, and then you bring Cam back on a team friendly deal, and you're right back in it. Just solve the Patriots right there. 1 year blip. I think, Ryan, we talked about the Seahawks being frauds.
Uh-oh.
What are we talking about with Baltimore here?
Well, as I said, I
Because
think they're going to miss the playoffs. I think that they're frauds this year.
because Ryan, the Patriots defense, I have been very vocal as saying this is not a good defense because of all the opt-outs, the injuries, whatever. We were playing with a rookie and a guy on a practice squad at linebacker, and they only scored 17 points. So I think the league has figured out the Lamar Jackson offense. So now he has to start making throws. And obviously, last night's not the best ideal weather for making throws, but this is 2 straight weeks now against two starkly different defenses as to them not really getting going and falling behind and not generating a lot of offense. So they don't remind me as the same team they were last year.
I think part of it is the offensive line is having some issues. And of course, they lost Ronnie Stanley. That's going to hurt. I think part of it is their receivers are kind of one dimensional. I think they could need some more dynamic threats at the wide receiver position. I think part of it is that defenses have figured out Lamar Jackson. He needs to adapt. I think next year they'll get back to where they need to be. But for this year, the offense is a real concern. I think that people are writing Lamar off way too quickly. Not you, but I think people are
I
writing
don't
him
know
off.
who's
People,
writing him off.
oh, I've seen a lot of takes where he can't throw the ball well. He was a
No,
one
no, no,
hit
no, no.
wonder.
I want to clarify my take. I just think that they need to kind of give him more tools to work with because I don't want to use the term gimmick because I think that's a disrespect to what Lamar Jackson is, but you need to branch out a little bit if you're Baltimore, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's the offense did what it needed to do last year, but then it got exposed in the postseason. And so this year people thought it would be the same and it wasn't. And as I said, there's a multitude of reasons for that, but they'll be fine. The franchise will be fine. Lamar Jackson will be fine. They just need to rework some things. And next year we'll be talking about how good the offense looks week to week. But this year, it's a big concern, and it might be the reason they don't make the playoffs. Because that's right now, falling to 6-3, the way the AFC is shaking out, as we talked about earlier, that's a very real possibility. So that was week 10 in the NFL. Looking to week 11, the Thursday night game might be the best one of the week with the Cardinals and the Seahawks. The Titans and the Ravens, that'll be a good game for playoff purposes. Both of those teams are 6-3. A loss for one of those teams could end up being detrimental, especially with the tiebreaker perspective. Um, you have Green Bay and Indianapolis. That might be a good one as long as Indianapolis's offense shows up again. I think that'll be fun. And then Kansas City and Las Vegas on Sunday night, and Los Angeles and Tampa Bay on Monday night. So good primetime slate of games this week. That might actually be the best 3 primetime games we've had all year, from Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night. I can't think of a better 3-game slate than this. But yeah, some good games next week. So be sure to stay tuned to the podcast. We'll talk about it. Next week will be Thanksgiving week, if you can believe that. We'll be 4 days away from Thanksgiving when we do this. So that'll be fun. So that was NFL. I do want to talk about the Masters before we move on to our segments. And I want to talk about the Masters because Dustin Johnson made the course look incredibly easy. He shot 20 under, and the next closest guy was Cameron Smith and Sung Jae Im, who were 15 under. So they had very good rounds, their own respect. But Dustin Johnson just made everything look incredibly simple, and he won the Masters pretty easily. It was cool watching the Masters in November, but I do prefer it in April. So I'm glad we'll never have to do this again. Hope, fingers crossed. Hopefully,
don't go that far, right?
It was nice to see how emotional DJ was afterwards. The little question and answer session on the green. I thought that was compelling television. And I think I saw somebody tweet it. It might have been Richard Deitch. But I agree. Just you could see how much it meant to him to win the Masters. It was clear something he's been trying to do forever, and he was finally able to do it. We talked about some of the usual suspects, and they were there. I mean, Rory was 11 under. Brooks Koepka was 10 under. I did say Ricky Fowler might be in contention. He wasn't really in contention, but he did finish 3 under, tied for 29th. Bryson DeChambeau had kind of a rough go of it there in the second round. That kind of took him out of things, but he calmed down a little bit over the final 2 days. But watching the Masters is always fun. I really wish they would have let Tony Romo. I don't know why they don't let him do it. I mean, just that he's played in events. He knows the game. So I really wish. By the way, golf is a sport. Just put that out there.
Yeah, I didn't know we still had to have that debate in 2020. Golf's fantastic. So couple little funny tidbits before. So we talked about how I dislike Bryson DeChambeau. A 63-year-old dude finished higher than him in the Masters. So how about that, Bryson? Bernhard Langer, I think his name was, Ryan, finished higher than Bryson on the list. Golf is very much a sport. Tony Romo doing golf would make it incredible. You would bring in a whole new crop of viewers if Tony Romo did golf. Well, Jim, all the sound effects and everything he does. And he's actually really good at golf too. But DJ, we talked about it when he won. I think it was the US Open with those ridiculous putts that he had. He's having an incredible year, especially with all the circumstances with COVID and the new protocols and everything else. And for him to do what he's done this season on the PGA Tour, I don't know if I guess this counts for this season, even though the calendar kind of flipped. Who the hell knows? But regardless, I'm going by years, not by seasons. But he has just dominated a lot of these tournaments, the bigger ones as well. And a lot of these guys that were 10 under or even lower, even lower. Those are really good performances at the Masters too. It's just that DJ had probably one of the best in the history of the course, right? I mean, you don't see 20 under too often at Augusta. So it was really nice to see. I didn't watch as much of it, but when I did, it felt weird. I didn't like seeing it in November. Felt kind of odd and strange, but we're going to have an entire NCAA tournament in one spot, so that'll be even stranger. But regardless, I'm really happy for him. And it was a pretty solid tournament considering, having it in November and being overshadowed by college football and the NFL. But yeah, You and your big list of guys too, Ryan. A lot of them were towards the top, so you called it.
Yeah, I mean, I really went on a limb with some of those guys, but I'm glad that they proved me right. Um, yeah, DJ, he won the Masters this year. He finished tied for second at the PGA, tied for sixth at the U.S. Open. They obviously didn't play the Open this year, but he's had a very good 2020, and hopefully all this momentum does him well for next season. As long as we have events next year, knock on wood. So that was talking golf. Um, Before we get into Disney Plus and Glenn, Matt, there's a television show on last week. I think I wouldn't know. I didn't look at my Twitter timeline at this time. Um, so if you want to just bring me through what's going on um, in this television show called The Bachelorette, was there an episode last week?
Oh yeah, Tuesday
Okay,
nights,
all
Ryan.
right.
Yeah, we don't want to be overshadowed by Monday Night Football or Dancing with the Stars. So we got a new Bachelorette. Tasha's in town.
Uh
Tasha,
oh.
we got rid of Claire. Thank God. We don't have to see her anymore. She was not a great Bachelorette in my eyes. Feels like a normal season now. We got Tasha in there. Had some nice dates. Um, Starting to have they brought in, so Ryan, big controversy last week. So they had the 16 guys that were there, and then they brought in like 4 or 5 new ones
Mm.
on top of the guys that were already there and they were close buds and everything. But then they bring in these new guys and everyone's hating on this new guy, Spencer, who's kind of like, snarky and cracking jokes, and the guys don't like him, and they're kind of going at each other, and I think it's all going to blow up tomorrow on the episode. So, yeah, but it was a pretty solid week. Felt like the Bachelorette was back. Didn't have Claire and all the weird drama with Dale and everything. So it's fun. There's a guy on there who looks like Ricky Fowler with the mustache and everything. So if you want to watch for that regard, I know Ricky's your boy. That could be interesting. The guy's name's Noah, I think. Solid show. Tasha, Ryan. Are you googling what happened last week?
No, 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 don't. I mean, as I say this every week, you could just be telling me a fake synopsis every single week. I still believe you, but yeah, it sounds like a lot of stuff's going on with a bunch of great guys and Tasha and whole group. Really, it sounds like a good old time.
Yeah, that was good analysis. Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
pretty
So
much.
that's
It's so Bachelor Nation excited to finally be back on a normal track. So yeah, good week.
okay. So that was in case you had missed the Bachelorette. That was there was a recap for you. That way you don't have to watch it and you can just dive into this week's episode. Um, so now we have Disney Plus and Glenn. And last week we only did one movie. We did Frozen, but this week we have a double feature. We got two. And maybe next week we'll have two as well. I don't know. We'll see. But this week we have Frozen 2 because we had to watch Frozen 2 after we watched Frozen, and we also have a Goofy movie. So we'll start with Frozen 2. That was a movie we both watched first in our viewing order. So, um, Frozen 2 was better than Frozen. Uh, I'm gonna give Frozen 2. I don't know if I put in the group chat. Actually, I want to see, but I'm Matt Frozen 2 is great. Number visually, the leap from 2013 to 2019, it can't be described. It was huge. Um, it was great. I liked the plot. I liked the songs. Everything about Frozen 2, I loved. It was great. I loved one of my favorite parts was Olaf describing the plot of Frozen 1. That was funny. And then at the end, if you had watched past the credits, he did the same thing about Frozen 2, which was also funny, uh, to Marshmallow and yeah, the Snogies. Frozen 2 was a great movie. I should have been on this franchise a lot earlier than I was, but I'm glad that I can say that I've watched both of the films. I can say that I was wrong about them, and now I enjoy them a lot.
Yeah, I gave this, I believe, so like an 8 point something, maybe 8.5, 8.6, something like that. The story was much better. I agree, Ryan. The just the visual aspects of it, it's you got to go and watch it if you haven't already. I like the story a lot more. I like that the message that it's sending, that even though that Elsa has these powers, that Anna, who doesn't necessarily have these powers, they need to work together in order to save the world and save uh, Arendelle. Arendelle, there I called it Arendelle. Sorry. They have to work together, and I like that message a lot. I think that as a society, we need to hear that we need to work together. So that you don't need mystical powers. You need to also work with your sister who might not have mystical powers. So it's cool that they work together. It hit me in my feels when Olaf, spoiler alert, faded away because there wasn't any magic there. But then he came back and it was great. He's my favorite character, Ryan. That was my favorite scene as well when he described the plot. Um, Very solid movie. I agree. I think you and I wrote it off a little too quickly. But again, just like you say about the Bachelorette, just a lot of stuff going on, busy guys. But I'm very pleased that we watched it. So I think there a movie or a short about Olaf. I don't know if it's a
Yeah,
full, yeah.
there's Once Upon a Snowman, which I want to check out. There's also Making of Frozen 2 that I want to see. But yeah, it was a very good movie. Once again, the plot kind of threw me through a loop. I didn't expect what had actually happened. So Matt already said spoiler alert. So if you're still listening, and it's your fault. Agnar was at the battle between Arendelle and North Uldra, and then stuff happened, and we later find out it's because of the grandfather stabbing the guy from North Uldra in the back. And the guy that had saved Agnar turned out to be his future wife and the mother of Elsa and Anna. And so we find out that they need to destroy the dam that would flood Arendelle, but then Elsa comes out of nowhere on the horse and they stop it, and everyone's all happy because it's a Disney movie. So it was a yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.3. It was better than Frozen, which I gave an 8.6. So I'm gonna give Frozen 2 a 9.3. It's something that I will now be able to watch whenever I need to just get away. I can just watch Frozen 2 for an hour and 40 minutes, and that'll be good. The salamander, the fire spirit, was funny. I liked him. That was another one of my favorite characters. Matthias was great. Everyone was great. Everyone was very good. So that was a good movie. Loved Frozen 2. If you're like me and Matt and you wrote it off, check out the franchise. I don't think that you'll be upset. Um, the other movie was vastly different, and that was a Goofy movie. And this was released, I want to get the year right. I want to say
I think it was,
2095. Okay, I was
yeah.
off. So, uh, a Goofy movie. You have young Max, who is, I guess he's in high school at this point, and he likes this girl who actually likes him, but he doesn't know that, and she doesn't know it either. But basically, Dad Goof, is wants to be closer to his son, so he takes them on what's supposed to be a fishing trip until mischievous Max changes the map to go to Los Angeles. But everything works out at the end. It was a very wholesome film where young Goof and old Goof finally get a nice father son relationship going. And at the end of the movie, uh, Roxanne was not upset that Max had lied to her. She was fine with it. So there's more to it than that. I'm not going to go through the entire plot, but it was so incredibly wholesome, and it was. I'm glad that Glenn had I mean, he's been talking about this movie probably longer than Frozen, and I can see why. And yeah, it was. I would give. I don't know what I gave it in the group chat, but I'm gonna. It was a very good movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so Glenn would be proud of me for the Disney Friday that I had. So Friday night, I did Frozen 2. It was like a late afternoon matinee kind of setup. Then I had some pizza for dinner. Then I watched a Blacklist on NBC, so I took a break from Disney, but I came back, watched a Mandalorian, which was really good. Then I did a Goofy movie. It was a great feel good movie to end the night. I liked the way it ended. Still, do not lie, everybody. Not a good. So Max lied to Roxanne, but then the whole thing was that he didn't want to go on the fishing trip because he was supposed to go to the party to watch the concert, which apparently we don't. I've never known a concert watching party. I guess that was a '90s thing. In any case, it was a very good movie. I have not seen the next one, Ryan. I know you have.
Yes.
That's on my list, so we'll probably throw that in for next week. I also liked the conciseness, whatever it is, of this film, right? So Glenn said it's like an hour plus whatever. Went through it. The story never lagged, kept moving along, and especially for something that came out in 95, you said, it was
Mm-hmm.
really good. I liked it. So Glenn, I said this to him. He is 3 for 3 right now. At least from my perspective. Would you say that he's 4 for 4 in suggesting movies to us?
Yes, an extremely goofy movie is also good.
All right.
So
So
Matt,
he's still batting 1,000 right now.
yeah,
So
and he gave us another movie to watch, and it was Moana, which I'm sure I will enjoy because it has Dwayne the Rock Johnson in it. So anytime you have the Rock in something, it's probably going to be good. And by the way, in case any of you do end up watching a Goofy movie, yes, the guy that voices PJ is the same guy that voices Carl Weezer in Jimmy Neutron. That is Rob Paulson. So if that voice sounds familiar, it's because it is. And I needed to check and make sure. And I was correct. I was like, that voice sounds really, because Carl Weezer's voice is obviously pretty unique. So it sounded pretty similar, and it was. Yeah, so watch Frozen 2, watch a Goofy movie. It'll be a good use of your time. You could bang both of those out in 3 hours if you wanted
but
to.
yeah, that's what I did on my Friday night. Like I got both in and still had time for 2 other shows. I'm also really proud of Glenn for watching Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get on Star Wars, Ryan.
Okay.
Come on, say Captain, mystical flying. Come on, say your little spiel that you do every time. Glenn's
It's
enjoying him. He's giving him pretty good reviews. I mean, he's
the way he talks about them though, it concerns me
no. So
because
here's so I know you. I know you're a very patient movie watcher. I think you would have the patience for it too, and Glenn does too, because he's still given high reviews after. Because I know some people that I recommend watching Star Wars don't have the patience to get through the first part of it when they set the story. I know Glenn does because he's a big movie guy. I know you do because you're a big movie guy. So I think you both can get through this effectively. And Glenn's on Return of the Jedi right now. He's going on release order. But I think both you guys have the patience to do it. It's definitely an acquired taste though, but I think you can do it too.
it's just the way Glenn has said it, like to have to sit through 90 minutes just for the final 20.
So
I
here's
don't.
my thing.
Okay.
I don't think I slightly disagree with him in this aspect, right? So the first movie is like that, 100%. The one he just watched, Empire Strikes Back, you get a little bit of bang at the beginning, then you get kind of some character setting. And these stories, you'll see if you like watch it through and then go back and watch it again, you'll see why, like you'll appreciate the setup a lot more, I think. Um, Judging by the way he's reviewing the first two, I already have a good sense of what movie he's going to like the best. So I'm interested, Glenn, if you're listening, I already know what movie I think you're going to like the best. So when you're all done, I'm going to see if I'm right. Um, but I think he is right that it does take a while to build up, but it is rewarding, I think, once you get to the climax of the movie and you see everything kind of come together. So either do that, Ryan, or watch the Marvel movies. You got a lot on your plate here. There's so many options.
Okay, so the Star Wars movies are on the list. The Marvel movies are on the list. I don't know how long it's gonna. I know how long it's gonna take me to get through all of them. It's gonna take me about 40 hours, it seems like. So about the length of a work week. But
I think you'll
well,
like Marvel more. I think you will like Marvel more. I don't know if Glenn likes movies. Does he watch Marvel movies or?
I don't know. I myself was not a fan of them, but the thing is, I think I talked about this earlier in a different episode. I have watched a few of them, but I've watched them out of order. So I think it would make more sense just to try to watch them in the right order and see if I enjoy them more that way. Because while the movies themselves were good, when I watched them, I could tell that I wasn't getting the full
Mhm.
experience. I was missing stuff that other people were understanding. I I think the one movie we watched, I thought that one of the guys was Deadpool, but it was somebody else. So clearly I wasn't on the right. It might, I don't know. I
You
thought
came
that
with us to Infinity War, I'm pretty sure. And that was when Jill was distraught at the end because you remember what happened? I mean, you saw it, right? So I'm not going to spoil anything.
Spider-Man died, right? Is that what was
Well,
this?
spoiler. So,
If you
well,
haven't seen it by
yeah.
this,
So
if
when
I've seen
he,
it, you should have
yeah.
seen it.
So yeah, he faded away, and Jill was all distraught. And then I was making fun of her when we left. So you were with us for that. That was literally the culmination of like the 10 films that came before it. So you literally missed everything and just saw the big climax of it all.
Yeah, that's a
So
see. I didn't enjoy it as much because I didn't go through 10
no,
years with
yeah,
these people.
you
I just saw
will you
the
will.
people dying. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I guess sure.
I think you'll enjoy it. So I think maybe your holiday season binge of these franchises, you should pick one of the two. I think you'll enjoy Marvel more, but I gotta ask Glenn. I don't know if he's watched them all, but they're both good. You can't go wrong with either. But I will say Star Wars is more of an acquired kind of. I don't want to say niche because I think that's disrespectful to it, but it's a lot more towards that than Marvel is.
All right, so that was Disney Plus and Glenn. I want to thank him for suggesting this segment because it gives us some fun things to talk about each week that aren't just sports. So that'll do it for episode number 15 of Best Available Podcast. But that's what I wanted to say. It was great to see Kim Ang finally get a GM position for the Miami Marlins. The Phillies could have hired her back in, I guess this would have been 2014, maybe 2015. I think 2015. Could have hired her back then, but we wanted Matt Klentak, so whatever.
Yeah, it was a
But
great hire by
it was.
Miami. I'm glad we got that in there. Yeah, her she's more qualified than like almost every GM in Major League Baseball. Like just the stuff she's kind of what you're making a face. Oh, did you
There,
get the Woj bomb that just happened? Is that the face that you're looking at?
that would be the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's if you're a Miami Marlins fan, seeing what they did this year on the field and then bringing her in the front office with her qualifications, she's more qualified than a lot of GMs that got hired recently. So Miami's going to be good pretty soon, I think. I don't know if you agree. But a big
Oh, I
Woj bomb. Do you want to
agree.
break the Woj bomb? Yeah. So
So
Miami, yeah,
I
Miami will be good.
initially went on Twitter, Matt, because there was a tweet that I saw after the hiring happened. And okay, here it is. So this is from Liz Rocher, and I think she's with Yahoo. She used to write for The Good Fight, which was a Phillies blog. The Marlins, they made the playoffs for the first time since '03, and they hired the first female GM in Major League Baseball. The Braves have a lot of talent, young and old, and their star won in the MVP. The Mets just got a filthy rich owner that wants to win. He's going to spend a lot of money to get players in there. The Nationals won the World Series a year ago. They still have talent throughout the system. And the Phillies have a new fanatic for legal reasons. So that's what the NL East is looking like at this point. So the Phillies could very well finish last in the NL East next season if they don't do anything. The Marlins, people joked around about, especially after Jeter, went there, and people are like, "Oh, when is this team ever going to be good again? They have no talent, this and that." They've quickly become one of the more intriguing teams in all of Major League Baseball, and they're going to be good. It seems like for a while. I said this before the season started, and I'll say it again. If they can just get some offensive skill guys, they're going to be good for a long time, and that's all they need. But even now, they're still a fun team to watch. I hope that they get the fan support there when fans are allowed back at the stadium, because they're going to be a fun team.
Yeah. I think in the direction Major League Baseball is going with younger managers in there, having a guy like Don Mattingly there, I think, is one of the exceptions to where it kind of benefits what they're doing. I don't know if you agree.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of unique. It's different than like, the LaRussa and everything else. He's one of the older guys to where I could sit there and say he is great for a young team. I don't know if baseball's kind of different where you in other sports you could bring in an older guy and you could kind of develop younger players, but baseball is kind of different, at least in our generation. There's a lot of experience between now the GM position and the manager position. So in terms of development and bringing people in, and yeah, they're going to be really good. So I'm excited for that franchise. They're going to be really good.
So to end the show, because it just happened, we're not going to talk about it, but I just want to put it out there. As a Sixers fan, this was a guy that we were rumored to maybe get, but now we will not. I'm not going to use the Woj, but I'm going to use the sham wow, and that's going to be OKC has traded Chris Paul to Phoenix for Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, Ty Jerome, draft compensation, and that draft pick is protected 1 to 12 in 2022, 1 to 10 in 2023, 1 to 8 in 2024, and unprotected in 2025. So the Suns now have Chris Paul. And that is where we will leave you today on Best Available Podcast, episode 15. Want to thank you all for listening to this episode. And we'll catch you again next week for a special Thanksgiving episode. Yay! Thanks for listening. We'll see